Okay, hello everybody. Welcome to Korean Atlanta Mentorship here with another debt payoff modeling video. With this time only $19.74 in our checking and savings, and we're going to turn this to almost $1,000 in an instant using something that we call the velocity method, which we used to call the velocity banking method, or actually just velocity banking, until the state of Illinois said, no, we can't let you do that because if you use the word banking and you're not a bank, that's bad times. We'll fine you. And they actually fined another YouTuber $20,000, I think, for using the term velocity banking. Look it up. Kwok Brothers, State of Illinois, cease and desist. All right, so what are we going to do here with the velocity method? Well, we're going to assume we have income, and we with our expenses we have a lot of debt, right? 3 credit cards, 2 auto loans, a student loan, and a mortgage, and then on top of that we have our personal expenses that we have to pay for every single month. And so we're going to assume with the same income and the same expenses, right, that we can make the debt payoff journey much easier. And here's step one of making the debt payoff journey easier, which is to not save money. See, sometimes in our demonstrations, we go a little negative in our checking and savings, but whether we're negative or positive, we have to make sure that this is zero. So the intention is to make sure that we don't have any money in our checking account. I know it's revolutionary, right? Like, how do you pay off debt? Don't save money. But a lot of people deep down inside know this, but they can't get themselves to do it, right? Because they have two contradictory ideas within their head, which is they know they need to pay off debt, and at the same time they need to save money. And I don't know if you ever heard the term like confused minds do nothing. So that's why a lot of people can't pay off debt. So what we're going to do is we're going to treat our checking and savings account that as if it's not the final destination of our money, right? So what's the final destination of our money? It's going to be something called a line of credit. And what is a line of credit? Well, it's basically a financial tool where you can borrow money, pay it back, and then use it over and over again. So there's different types: personal, business, home equity lines of credit. Um, the easiest one to get is probably a home equity if you're a homeowner, and if you don't own a home, it's probably personal. And then if you own a business, you get a business line of credit. See how um, all of the names are related to how you can obtain the line of credit. And a credit card is technically a line of credit, okay? But the difference between a credit card and a personal home equity or any type of other line of credit is that credit cards can't be used to pay everything. Right? Like you can't use a credit card to pay a student loan or auto loan, or it's much harder, right? Like you have to use plastic.com. So we're not going to talk about that today because plastic.com has like I think almost 3% fees. So it's just a little bit harder, although we can use it, but we're going to use the right tool for the right job, which is the line of credit. Okay. Now, what we're going to do is within our budget, aka our debt attack plan, is we're going to assume that we have access to a line of credit, and I'm going to talk about that a little bit later. And we also are going to use a formula called the cash flow index, right? So what is the cash flow index? Well, I'll just show you what it is. It's basically the debt balance, the current debt balance divided by the current payment. And then it's going to give you an arbitrary number, right? Arbitrary number. And this think of this as a ranking system. So the lower the number, the more bang you get for your buck for paying off the debt. So you see the high number, which is the 30-year mortgage. Why is it a bad idea to pay off the 30-year mortgage in terms of cash flow? Well, some people think it's a good idea because, oh my God, goodness, it's my home, right? Like I should pay off the mortgage. Yes, you need to pay off the mortgage, but not first. You got to pay it off last, right? And because if you look here, it says you have to pay 240,000 to in order to get $1,100 cash flow back. That's a bad deal in terms of the other debts that you could pay off. Because, for example, I could pay these 3 loans, like the auto loan, 2 auto loans, the student loans, and that's about, I don't know, 42, 62,000, and I get even more cash flow. So what makes more sense to pay that 240,000 for $1,100 or 62,000 for 1,200, right? Or actually that's 900. So a little bit more. Yeah, so or maybe like a credit card there too. So we'll add the credit card and then that'll give us more cash flow than the mortgage, right? So more bang for your buck, which is why we want to pay off these low cash flow index numbers first, okay? And so what we're going to do is we're going to just kind of sum up the credit cards, the credit card balances, and then assume that we have a line of credit that's a little bit higher than the credit card balances. So we'll say $30,000, and if it's a personal line of credit, interest rate's probably 15%. And the reason why the personal line of credit interest rate is higher than the home equity line of credit is because with the personal line of credit, it's unsecured. So if you bail on them, the only thing they can go after you is the amount that you borrowed, and they can't go after an asset like a house, like as if when you borrow, I'm sorry, if just like when you bail or don't pay your home equity line of credit. Okay. So here's the thing: if you have $19 left over, is the bank going to give you a free and clear line of credit that's $30,000? The answer to that is probably not. And why is that? It's because banks don't lend money to people who need it, right? Banks don't lend money to people who need it. And if you're the bank and you see someone who needs money, they think you're a bad person, okay? Because they know from their institutional experience that people who need money don't pay you back. Okay, that's why they don't lend money to people who need it. I mean, think about your own life. When people asked you, like, can you lend me money? And then they told you they needed it. Did you pay you back? Probably 99% no. And the bank knows this too. That's why they don't lend money to people who need it, because people who need money are bad according to them. Now, why do we demonstrate with the free and clear line of credit? It's because it's much easier to demonstrate the benefits of this if I don't have a maxed out line of credit. Now, I do have real life case scenarios just so that you're aware. 99-cent YouTube channel membership where someone had 22 debts, $5,000 of income, $4 left over. This is a real life case study and a maxed out line of credit, and we use a strategy. But I'm going to make the demonstration easy just so they can see the wow factor. Like, what was that, Luke or Owen Wilson? He goes, wow, wow. All right. All right. So let's go ahead and move this 28,000. So we're just going to do a debt transfer into the line of credit. And guess what happens here when we do the debt transfer? It's almost like a credit card transfer, right? Oh my goodness, these all go to zero, right? And so now this $19 is almost like $1,000. Okay, it's it's like magic. That's what some people have told me. Like, how did this go from zero to 5,000? I've done demonstrations like that with, like, what, 10 credit cards, $167,000 of debt. All I did was just transfer the debt and the payments go away, and so we increased our cash flow. And so now let's see how long it takes to pay off the 28,000. So to calculate that, it's based on the previous month's balance, previous month's interest, 942.24. And then what we're going to do is we take the average daily balance, right? Because that's how you calculate the interest. Multiply by the interest rate, and then, no, interest rate is 15, my bad, 1.5, and divide by 12. And then I'm going to do this, and I'm going to go ahead and copy and paste, right? And then we see that it gets paid off relatively quickly, right? Copy and paste. And then I'm going to go ahead and do that. And we see that in month 38, that we're free and clear of the credit cards, right? So it took us 38 months to pay the credit cards, okay? And then I'm just going to go ahead and do this, 38 months, and that was 28K. I believe it was 28K. All right, so now this is going to be, all right, so now I'm going to go ahead and copy and paste 3 milestones, 2 auto loans, a student loan, and a mortgage. So let's go ahead and check this out and see what the balance of these are. So this is going to be month 38. Was it 38? Hold on, let me quickly check. Yeah, 38. And then look at that. We have these low cash flow index numbers. So we're going to pay off these first. So how much is that? That's going to be like 15 grand, right? So let me go ahead and sum it up. And then that's going to be, yes, about 16 grand. We're going to move the 16 grand into the line of credit. Okay, so let me go ahead and do this. And I'm going to copy and paste. And then that's going to be plus 16252.49. And then guess what happens here, right? Guess what happens here? This is going to be 0, 0, right? So because we moved the debt transfer, we get these payments back in our cash flow number. And now our cash flow is almost $2,000. Well, almost, right? Not quite there, but it's much better than $19.74, right? Okay, so much better than the $19 number. And then what we're going to do is update our cash flow. Okay. And now I'm going to go ahead and do this. And then I'm going to just do minus 1705.88. And then I'm going to go ahead and copy and paste. And 1 second. Okay, so let me just check something. And so now we see that in 48 months, it's been paid off. And then I just got to go to my milestone calculator, and we see that 2 cars got paid off in 10 more months. So it's going to be 28 plus 22 plus 20. And then that's going to be 70K. And then we have the student loan and the mortgage. So what's that in the 48 months? So it's going to be 0, 0, 48, 48. And then, so now we are going to pay off the student loan. So something I always tell you is that if you have this really high cash flow index number and there's huge difference between the loan and line of credit interest rate, and the line of credit interest rate in this case is actually 15%. Usually it was 8 because we're using home equity line of credit. But one thing I want to show you is that if there's a huge difference and the cash flow index is relatively high, meaning I will say above 50 for our purposes, then we don't want to move the whole loan into the line of credit, right? So we're going to use something called chunking or incremental payoff, or maybe I'll come up with another name for it. I'll call it the sweep. I think Google Gemini gave me that name. Call it the sweep, right? Which is you're just sweeping, right, a piece of the loan into the line of credit, and then you'll notice that when you do it that way, it's going to be resistant to the interest rate. Whereas if you move a whole loan into a line of credit, that actually will um, affect the amount of interest that you pay. And I see so many people on the internet promoting that. And that's kind of like this is like the one like you can't screw this up except for one way you can screw it up, which is move an entire loan into a line of credit. Okay, especially if the this cash flow number is relatively big. So let me go ahead and show you how that works. So basically, what we do here is we take a piece of the loan. So just kind of give you just an arbitrary number. I would say maybe like twice the cash flow, but in this case, I'll just do $5,000. It's not going to make that big of a difference, but let me just kind of do this here. So what we do is we move $5,000 of the loan into the line of credit plus 5000. Okay, we still make the monthly payments, right? And then we see that in 1 to about 3 months it gets paid off. Okay, and then we just rinse and repeat over and over again, right? So do this here, and then another 5,000, and so on and so forth. So every 3 months, that 5,000 is gone, and we're still making the monthly payment though. That's why this cash flow hasn't increased. Okay. Now you might be saying, well, why don't I just make extra payments directly? It's because um, it's harder to deal with extra payments, especially when you're making payments directly into the loan. So the way I kind of think about it is, I don't know if you ever heard of like middleware software, where basically if you have two systems talking to each other, there's a middleware to kind of use as a bridge. And this is, you might be able to I'm sorry, relate with this if you're into software. But let's say you have a system like Salesforce and then QuickBooks, right? Then Salesforce doesn't directly talk to QuickBooks for the most part. It talks to a middleware, talks to a bridge, right? So the line of credit is our bridge because it allows us to have free flow of our money in and out. So that's one way you can think about it. But extra payments is the default option, but most people don't do it anyways, right? Because a loan is a one-way street and introduces friction when you're trying to pay off the debt. And so if you miscalculate the amount you've overpaid and then say, "Hey, I need some cash," it's like, whoopsie, you kind of yeah, I don't want to say screwed, but it's going to be a little bit harder for you, right? So hold on, give me 1 second. So now I'll just show you how the quote the sweep works. I think I'll use that term now, the sweep. Call it incremental payoff or chunking, but give me one moment to put in the calculator. Okay, so let me just check a few things. So what's our income? 5,200. What's our expenses is everything except for the loan we're trying to pay off. So it'll be these two. Whoopsie. Why did this not calculate correctly? What did I do wrong? All right, so I'm going to delete this, and then I'm going to go ahead and sum this up. So our expenses is 3145.8. So 3145.8. And then we can do a $5,500 chunk at 15%. And then we're going to pay off the student loan first. So student loan term is 10 years. And then the payment amount is, let me just check here, 348.33. So it's not that big. 348.33. That's what she said. Okay, bad joke. All right, so now let me just kind of go here, which is income. No, hold on. Balance is 30,000, right? 30000. Interest rate, I believe, is 7%. And then what's the current balance? Let's just quickly check right here in our loan calculator. 48 months, I believe. Yeah, 48 months. 20430.83. So let's go ahead and do that right here. All right, so now I'm going to do this. Okay. All right. So now we see that it pays off in less than a year, right? So even with this 15% line of credit, look how little interest we pay. Now, granted, we didn't even really pay that much interest even if we went the full 10 years. But let's think about our cash flow and how we could recover our cash flow in less than a year. So we save a little bit of interest, recover our cash flow, make it easy to pay, and then it'd be 48 plus zero point 0.8 times 12. So that's going to be 58 months, right? 58 months, and then that's going to be 100K. And then now the next one is a 30-year mortgage, and we just kind of repeat the same process again with the 30-year mortgage. So a month 58, just kind of do it again. And so now what we do is we pay off everything, or we put the expenses, everything except for the loan we're trying to pay off. So it's $2,000 now. So let me just do this, 2000. And then now 30 years payment amount is 1145.8. And then the interest rate is 4%. And then the original balance is 240, so 240000. And then the current balance is 20, no, current balance is 217. Okay. All right, so 217. And then we see here it gets paid off in 6.5 years. And then now that's pretty good, paying off a mortgage in 6.5 years. So now it's going to be 58 divided by 12 plus 58 divided by 12 plus 6.5. And then 11.33 years, we're completely debt free. So that's 340K of debt. Woohoo! All right. So that's zero. And then after every single month, we get 3,200 here. And you know what's funny? Okay. Like, if you want to know how these videos do, we get a lot of watch time, 12.8 hours. And I posted this yesterday. And you know how many people comment? Zero. So I know you're watching, but there's this thing I talked about, which is the velocity banking. Well, actually, we can't even call it velocity banking anymore, right? The velocity method poker face, which is people love to watch, but I think they're a little bit shy. So, if you've been watching, and I know who my favorite watchers are, so not you guys because you guys are awesome, but people who are new to the channel or people who have been shy, go ahead and comment. Let me know what your insight is from watching these videos because obviously people are getting a lot of value from it, from watching for 12.8 hours, right? For only 104 views. Okay. All right. Well, that's it for today, folks. This is Korean Lanta Mentorship. Have a great day. I'll see you in the next video.